The screen fades in with the low hum of an ocean liner, waves crashing in the distance. A soft, creaking sound builds. They call it paradise at sea, but sometimes a cruise ship carries more than passengers. It carries secrets, vanished travelers, screams that no one can explain, reflections that don't belong to you. Tonight, you'll hear the stories that were never meant to leave the ocean. Stories of terror that linger long after the voyage ends. And remember, once you board, there's no turning back. Dim the lights, subscribe to Midnight Outcry, and press the bell icon so you never miss what lurks in the dark. They told me cruises were safe, that the worst thing I'd have to worry about was seasickness or running out of sunscreen. But that was before I heard the scratching inside my cabin walls. Before I realized something else was traveling with us, something that was never meant to be seen. My name is Daniel Price. I'm 32, an electrician from Ohio, and this cruise was supposed to be my celebration trip. I had just landed a huge contract at work, the kind of job that could change my life, and I wanted to reward myself. A week on the ocean, a balcony room, free drinks, endless buffets. It sounded perfect. The first 2 nights were exactly what I'd hoped for. I drank too much, laughed with strangers, and stood at the railing watching the black ocean slip by under 1,000 stars. I felt free, like the weight of the world had been left back on land. But on the 3rd night, something changed. It was just past midnight when I woke up. At first, I thought it was a dream. A faint, rhythmic scratching, like nails dragging slowly against metal. I sat up in bed, listening. The sound wasn't outside. It wasn't on the balcony. It was inside the walls. I pressed my ear to the paneling. The scratching was louder there, right behind my headboard. Long, deliberate drags as though something with claws was crawling just out of sight. I told myself it was just pipes, maybe rodents. But when I knocked on the wall, the scratching stopped. Dead silence. And then 2 knocks came back. I stumbled backward, my blood turning to ice. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I kept the lights on, sitting upright in the chair by the balcony, staring at those walls like they were about to split open. Every creak of the ship made my skin crawl. Every groan of the steel made me flinch. When morning came, I tried to laugh it off. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe it was just the metal expanding and contracting with the cold night air. Ships made noise, right? That's what I kept telling myself over coffee at the buffet. But I couldn't shake the memory of those knocks. They hadn't sounded random. They'd been timed. Me knocking twice and the sound returning. A response. By the afternoon, I convinced myself I had to know. Curiosity was eating me alive. When housekeeping came to clean, I slipped back into the cabin early. As soon as the door shut, I crouched by the wall and tapped 3 times. Nothing. I tapped again. This time, it answered. 3 slow knocks. Deliberate, perfectly matching mine. I froze, hands still on the wall, heart thudding so loudly I was sure whoever or whatever was inside could hear it. "Hello?" I whispered, instantly regretting it. Silence. Then, scratching again. Faster this time, angrier. I yanked my hand back, stumbling toward the door when the TV flickered on by itself. Static hissed through the cabin. The remote sat untouched on the dresser. And through the static, I heard it faint but clear. A voice. Daniel. It said my name. My stomach dropped so hard, I nearly collapsed. No one here knew me. No one on this ship knew my name. Not the crew, not the strangers I'd drunk with at the bar. No one. I shut the TV off, but as soon as I did, the knocking started again. Louder, closer. And this time, it wasn't just behind the wall. It was inside the room. I stood frozen in the center of the cabin, every muscle in my body locked. The knocks weren't muffled anymore. They were sharp, hollow, coming from the inside of the room, as if someone was tapping on invisible walls of air. My throat was dry, but somehow I managed to croak out, "Who's there?" The knocking stopped. The silence that followed was worse, heavy, expectant. My heart pounded so loudly that I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. I backed toward the balcony door, fumbling for the latch, desperate to get out, to breathe. But before my hand touched the handle, the lights flickered. Once, twice. Then the entire cabin went dark. The only glow came from the sliver of moonlight bleeding through the glass balcony door. My reflection stared back at me faintly, except it wasn't alone. Another silhouette stood behind me. My chest seized up. I spun around, swinging wildly in the dark, but nothing was there. The air smelled faintly of salt and rust, sharper than the ocean outside. My hand shook so badly I could barely unlock the balcony door. I slid it open and stumbled out, gasping in the night air. The sea stretched out endlessly, calm and black, stars scattered across the horizon. For a brief moment, I let myself believe I was safe out here. Whatever was inside couldn't follow me into the open. Then I looked down. On the glass door, in the reflection of the room behind me, something was moving. A figure, tall, thin, crawling slowly out from the very wall where I'd first heard the scratching. Its body bent in ways it shouldn't, shoulders dislocating as it pushed through the surface like the wall was liquid. I should have turned away. I should have run, but I couldn't. My eyes were locked on it, and then, as its face slid into view, I realized with horror that it wasn't faceless after all. It was my face, but twisted, smiling in a way I never could. The reflection lifted its hand and knocked on the inside of the glass door. 3 times. The 3 knocks on the glass rattled through me harder than the stormiest wave could. My twisted reflection leaned closer, its forehead pressing against the balcony door as its grin widened unnaturally, stretching too far across my own face. "No," I whispered, my breath fogging the glass. My legs refused to move, though every nerve screamed at me to run. The reflection's lips parted, but no sound came out. Instead, I heard it directly in my head. "Let me in." I stumbled backward, slamming into the railing. The ocean gaped below, black and endless, like it was waiting. My hand clutched the balcony rail until my knuckles burned. Torn between 2 impossible choices: stay with whatever was in my room or throw myself into the sea. The lights inside the cabin flickered back on for a second, and in that blink, the thing was no longer just in the reflection. It was standing in the room. My knees buckled. I scrambled toward the balcony door to slam it shut, but when I looked again, the cabin was empty. Just my suitcase on the bed, the chair pushed neatly to the corner. I should have felt relief. Instead, dread sank even deeper into my chest. Because when I glanced at the glass again, there, it was still standing in the reflection, smiling at me, though nothing stood behind it in the real room. "Stop," my voice cracked. "What are you?" It raised its hand again and dragged its nails slowly down the glass. The screeching pierced my ears, like steel cutting steel. I covered my ears, but I could still hear it inside my skull, vibrating through my bones. And then it spoke. This time out loud, though its lips didn't move. "You invited me." I staggered inside, slamming the balcony door shut. My heart hammered as I tore the curtains closed, blocking the reflection, but the scratching didn't stop. It moved to the walls again, surrounding me, circling the room. Desperate, I ripped the phone off its cradle and dialed the front desk. The line clicked. Static filled my ear. And through the static, my own voice answered. "Daniel, stop running." The phone slipped from my hand, clattering against the nightstand. My own voice, calm and steady, still echoed faintly from the receiver. "Daniel, stop running." I kicked it away like it was poison, chest heaving. But before I could even process what was happening, there was a knock at my cabin door. A real one this time. I froze. 3 sharp raps, deliberate and heavy, vibrating through the wood. My first instinct was to scream, to yell for help, but the thought of opening that door terrified me more than the thing inside. "Mr. Ward?" A voice, human this time, a man's. "This is security. We've had a report of disturbance." My lungs released the breath I didn't realize I was holding. A lifeline. I rushed to the door, fumbling with the lock, but as my hand hovered on the handle, the words replayed in my head. "We've had a report of disturbance." From who? I hadn't called for help. Nobody else could have heard. I hesitated. "Mr. Ward," the voice said again, firmer now. "Open the door. Something was wrong. My last name wasn't on my booking. I'd checked in under my middle name, Daniel Blake." No one here should have known Ward. My hand shook violently as I backed away from the door. "Who are you?" I croaked. Silence. Then, slowly, the handle began to turn on its own. "No!" I shouted, throwing my weight against the door. It rattled in its frame as if something was forcing it open from the other side. The lights flickered again. When they steadied, I saw it. The reflection in the balcony door, grinning wider, pressed against the glass with both palms flat, as though enjoying the show. I staggered back, heart pounding. "What do you want from me?" The door stopped rattling. Silence swallowed the room. Then came the scratching. Not from the walls this time, from inside the wardrobe. The doors rattled. Something was pushing to get out. My knees nearly buckled as I stumbled backward. Slowly, the wardrobe creaked open inch by inch, and I braced myself for whatever horror would crawl free. But what stepped out made my blood run cold. It was me. Dressed in the same clothes I wore, down to the sweat-soaked shirt, same trembling hands, same wide, terrified eyes. He smiled. I didn't. And in my voice, he whispered, "You're already gone, Daniel. I'm what's left." I backed against the wall, chest heaving, as the other me stepped fully out of the wardrobe. Every detail was perfect. My clothes, my messy hair, even the way my right shoe squeaked when he walked. Except for the smile. That smile never left his face. "This isn't real," I muttered, shaking my head. "I'm dreaming. This can't be happening." He tilted his head, mocking me like he'd heard the same words before. "You keep saying that. You've been saying it for nights." "What are you?" I shouted. My voice cracked, but I didn't care. His smile widened. "I'm the part they let in when you boarded. You think you were ever just you? No, Daniel. You left something behind on the dock that day, and I filled the empty space." I stumbled sideways, gripping the chair for balance. Why me? The lights flickered. The reflection in the balcony door changed. Dozens of faces appeared, different passengers. Some I remembered from dinner. Others I'd only passed in the hallway. All of them pale, wide-eyed, pressing against the glass as though trapped behind it. Their mouths moved in silence, screaming words I couldn't hear. "They asked the same thing," the copy said, his voice calm, almost kind. "Why them? Why now? But the sea doesn't choose, it takes and it keeps." I bolted for the door, but when I yanked it open, the hallway stretched impossibly long. Endless. The same repeating pattern of carpet and lights that never seemed to end, like I was trapped inside a loop. My double's footsteps echoed behind me, unhurried, like he knew I had nowhere to go. I ran until my legs burned, until my lungs begged for air, but the hallway didn't change. When I glanced behind me, he was closer, only a few feet away now. "Stop running," he said softly, but it carried, booming inside my skull. "It only makes it worse." I tried one last door, slamming it open, and froze. I was back in my cabin, my suitcase still on the bed, the curtains still drawn, and my reflection still waiting at the balcony door, smiling. I turned slowly. The copy was already there, standing inches away. His smile was gone now, replaced with something worse, an empty, hungry stare. "You were never supposed to leave," he whispered. And then he stepped forward, into me. Cold fire ripped through my veins. I screamed, but the sound came out wrong, two voices tangled together. My vision blurred, the cabin spun. I clawed at my skin as if I could tear him out, but my hands didn't obey. They stilled, calm, too calm. The mirror by the bathroom door caught my eye, and I knew instantly. It wasn't me looking back anymore. The eyes were mine, the face was mine, but the smile, that monstrous smile, belonged to him. The next morning, a steward knocked to deliver breakfast. He found the cabin spotless, bed made, luggage neatly packed. No sign of struggle, no sign of a guest. "Strange," he muttered. "Thought this one was occupied." He marked it vacant on his clipboard and moved on. That evening, new passengers boarded. A young couple walked past my cabin, laughing as they dragged their suitcases. Inside, I stood at the balcony door, smiling through the glass, waiting for the next one. Story 2. The sound came just after midnight, 3 sharp knocks on glass. Not from the hallway, Not from inside, but from the balcony. My name's Daniel. I'm 34, and I work in real estate in Chicago. I booked this cruise out of Miami because, after a rough breakup, I wanted noise, laughter, and distraction, not ghosts in the night. I thought a week in the Caribbean would be the cure. I was wrong. I had been sitting on my balcony, a drink in my hand, letting the sea air wash over me. The night was calm, the horizon flat, nothing but black ocean stretching in every direction. Then came the first knock. 3 taps, slow, deliberate. I frowned, stood up, and checked the cabin door. Nothing. The hallway outside was quiet, carpet soft under the dim lights, the air fresh with that artificial lemony scent the crew used. No one there. I shook my head, laughed nervously, and went back inside. But as soon as I pulled the curtain closed, the knocks came again. From behind the glass door, I froze. My drink trembled in my hand, ice clinking against the glass. I stared at the sliding door to the balcony. Beyond it was only the ocean. We were 10 stories up. No one could be standing outside. No one. Yet the sound was real. 3 knocks. Slow, heavy, as if knuckles rapped against the glass with intention. I forced myself to slide the curtain open, heart in my throat. Nothing. Just the endless black sea and my own reflection staring back at me in the glass. I tried to rationalize it. Ships creak. Metal shifts. Maybe it was just the wind hitting the balcony rail in some weird way. My mind latched onto that explanation like a lifeline. But that night, as I lay in bed, the knocking returned. Softer, faster, almost impatient. I pulled the blanket over my head like a child, every nerve screaming at me to stay still, stay quiet. By morning, I told myself it was exhaustion. Too much sun, too much alcohol. I needed coffee, not paranoia. The buffet was crowded, alive with chatter and the smell of pancakes. I started to believe I had overreacted, until the man at the next table leaned over, his voice low, his eyes shadowed from lack of sleep. "You heard it too, didn't you?" The fork froze halfway to my mouth. "What do you mean?" "The knocking," he said flatly. "It starts on the second night. Always on the second night." I stared at the man, fork still frozen halfway to my mouth. His eyes were tired, almost hollow, like someone who hadn't slept in days. "I don't know what you're talking about," I muttered, though my voice didn't sound convincing, not even to myself. He gave me a thin smile, as if he'd heard that excuse before. "You'll understand soon enough." And then he stood, picked up his tray, and walked away, leaving me with cold eggs, bitter coffee, and a knot in my stomach that refused to loosen. The rest of the day, I tried to forget about it. I swam in the pool. I had a few drinks. I even struck up conversations with a group of friendly tourists from Texas. For a while, it worked. The sun, the laughter, the endless ocean, it almost convinced me the night before had been a trick of the mind. Almost. But then night came, and with it, the knocking. It started at 12:14 a.m. 3 taps, clear, sharp, on glass. I sat up in bed, holding my breath. My cabin was dark, except for the faint glow of the bedside lamp. The curtain on the balcony door shifted slightly in the air conditioning. Tap, tap, tap. This time, it wasn't slow. It was urgent, demanding. I forced myself out of bed, every muscle in my body screaming at me not to. I pulled the curtain open and froze. There was a handprint on the glass. Not mine, not possible. It was on the outside. A perfect print, smeared slightly as if pressed by something wet. But we were 10 stories up. The balcony jutted over nothing but open sea. No one could be out there. No one could climb. And yet, the print was there. I didn't sleep. I sat in the corner of the room with the lights on until dawn, staring at that mark until the sunlight finally washed it away. At breakfast, I scanned the dining hall for the man who had spoken to me the day before. He was at a table by the window, hunched over, his face pale. And this time, he wasn't alone. 2 women and another man sat with him. All of them looked the same, sleepless, anxious, haunted, their heads bent close as they whispered to each other. I hesitated, then walked over. The man looked up at me, and for a moment, there was something almost relieved in his eyes. "You saw it," he said quietly. "Not a question, A statement. My voice caught. The handprint. The group exchanged glances. One of the women nodded slowly. That's how it begins. I pulled out a chair and sat with them, my pulse pounding in my ears. The woman who had spoken leaned in, her voice low, like she was afraid the walls might hear. "They call it the invitation," she whispered. "It comes on the second night, always the second night. 3 knocks at first, then the handprint. If you ignore it, it gets worse." My skin prickled. Worse how? The man beside her, a thin guy with glasses and a nervous twitch in his jaw, answered without hesitation. "The knocks don't stop. They get louder, closer." And then one night, he swallowed hard. "Someone answers them." I frowned. "Answers them? You mean they open the balcony door?" The first man said grimly, his eyes fixed on mine. "And they don't come back." The table went quiet, the words hanging in the air like a weight. I wanted to laugh it off, to tell them they were insane, that this was just seasickness or paranoia. But the memory of that handprint, wet, human, impossible, burned in my mind. "I saw it," I admitted, my voice barely audible. "The handprint." The woman nodded slowly, as if that confirmed something. "Then you're marked." For a long time, none of us spoke. The dining hall around us buzzed with life kids running to get more cereal, waiters weaving between tables, the clink of silverware. But at our table, it felt like we were cut off, already drifting somewhere darker. That night, I tried to prepare. I locked the balcony door. I pushed a chair against it, as if that flimsy barrier could stop whatever it was. I left the lights on. I even played music on my phone, anything to drown out the silence. But silence has a way of breaking through. At exactly 12:14, the music glitched, froze, then cut out, and the knocking began. 3 sharp taps. I froze, staring at the balcony door. The glass seemed to shimmer in the lamplight like it was breathing. Tap, tap, tap. This time, the sound wasn't from outside. It came from inside the room. I stumbled back, my legs hitting the bed, my breath ragged. The knocking echoed again, but now it came from the wall opposite the balcony. Then from the ceiling. Then from the floor, surrounding me. Tap, tap, tap. I covered my ears, but it didn't matter. The sound wasn't just noise anymore. It was inside me, vibrating through my bones. And then it stopped. The room went dead silent. The lamp flickered once, twice, and went out. In the dark, I heard something far worse than knocking. A whisper, so close it could have been against my ear. "Let me in." I didn't move. I couldn't. My back was pressed against the headboard, heart hammering so violently I thought it might explode. The room was pitch black, except for the faint blue glow of the digital clock. 12:16 a.m. "Let me in," the whisper came again, faint but sharp, as if the words were slipping through the cracks of the walls themselves. I fumbled for my phone on the nightstand, desperate for light. The screen lit up, and for a split second I saw something reflected in the glass of the balcony door. A figure. Not fully formed, more like a shadow, tall, thin, standing just beyond the glass. Its head tilted unnaturally to the side, watching. I blinked. It was gone. The knocks resumed. Harder this time. Louder. The glass shook with each hit. Tap, tap, tap. I whispered to myself, "Don't answer. Don't answer. Don't." A sudden, violent crash erupted from the balcony door, as if something huge had thrown its weight against it. The entire cabin rattled. I staggered to the corner, clutching my phone like it could save me, and then silence. The clock read 12:20 a.m., the longest 6 minutes of my life. By morning, I thought I had dreamed it. Maybe it was a night terror, stress, exhaustion. I forced myself to believe that until I went to breakfast. The group was sitting at the same table by the window, except one chair was empty, the nervous man with glasses. I slid into a seat, my voice low. "Where is he?" The others exchanged a look. The woman whispered, "He opened it." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean? You saw him?" The first man shook his head. His voice was hoarse, broken. "We heard him, his screams, then nothing." The woman's eyes filled with tears. This morning, his cabin was empty. All his things still there. But him? Gone. Just gone. I stared at them, throat dry. I wanted to deny it, to say he must have gone to the infirmary or been taken off the ship. But I knew. Deep down, I knew. Because later, when I returned to my cabin, there was something waiting on the balcony glass. Another handprint, but this one was larger and smeared in something dark. It looked like blood. I didn't step inside my cabin that afternoon. The moment I saw that smeared handprint, thick and rust-colored against the glass, I felt something inside me snap. I turned, slammed the door shut behind me, and walked the corridors in a daze. Everywhere I went, I noticed the same thing. People laughing, drinking, lounging by the pool as if nothing was wrong, as if they couldn't hear the whispers in the dark, as if they didn't notice passengers disappearing, one by one. That evening, I met the group again. None of us spoke about the food, the weather, or the shows happening on the ship. The only thing we cared about was survival. "It's getting stronger," the woman said, clutching her coffee cup like it was an anchor keeping her sane. "When I passed the crew hallway this morning, I heard it, knocking from behind the steel doors." The first man leaned forward. "I told you, it doesn't just come to cabins. It spreads, deck by deck, room by room." I hesitated before whispering, "Then why doesn't anyone else hear it?" The man's gaze dropped to the table. His lips trembled as he muttered, "Because not everyone's marked." The silence that followed was suffocating. Only the clatter of silverware in the background reminded me we were still in a dining hall, still on a luxury cruise, not trapped in some nightmare. That night, I didn't go back to my cabin right away. I wandered instead, drifting through the ship like a ghost. My feet carried me to the lowest passenger deck, where the lights flickered more often, and the halls smelled faintly of rust and damp. It was there that I found something I wasn't supposed to see. A door at the end of the hall, half open, with a faded sign that read, "Crew access only." From the shadows inside, I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. The sound echoed, low and deliberate, like someone knocking from the other side of a coffin. My whole body stiffened. I should have run. I should have pretended I never heard it. But instead, I stepped closer. The knocking grew louder, faster. The door rattled against its frame as if something inside was desperate to get out. And then silence. A voice seeped through the crack in the door, soft and broken. My voice. "Please, let me in." I stumbled back, nearly falling over. My own words, my own tone, echoing from the other side of that steel door. Suddenly, footsteps thundered behind me. A crew member in uniform stormed down the hall, his face pale with fury. He grabbed the door and slammed it shut, locking it with a key he pulled from his belt. "You never saw this," he hissed, his eyes burning into mine. "Go back to your cabin. If you want to survive, stay away from this deck." But his hands were shaking, and his uniform sleeve, it was smeared with the same dark stain I'd seen on my balcony glass. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it again, my own voice whispering from behind that steel door. "Please, let me in." By morning, I was trembling from exhaustion, barely able to keep food down at breakfast. The group noticed instantly. "You went down there, didn't you?" the woman asked, her eyes narrowing. I hesitated, then nodded. I heard it, behind one of the crew doors, my own voice. Her hand flew to her mouth. The first man swore under his breath. "Then it's worse than we thought." "What do you mean?" I demanded. He leaned closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. "It doesn't just want inside your room, it wants inside you. Once it learns your voice, it's already halfway there." My stomach dropped. "Halfway where?" "To taking you." The words settled over the table like poison. I pushed my tray away, unable to eat another bite. That evening, I tried to avoid my cabin entirely. I roamed the ship, forcing myself into the casino, the lounge, anywhere crowded and noisy. But as midnight crept closer, a strange thing began to happen. No matter where I went, I could hear it. 3 knocks, sometimes faint, hidden under the music. Sometimes so sharp it made glasses tremble on the tables. Tap, tap, tap. I rushed back to the group, desperate to see if they heard it too. To my horror, their faces told me everything they did. Each of us, wherever we were, had started to hear the knocking. "It's spreading," the woman whispered, her voice shaking. "Once it marks you, it doesn't let go. It follows you. It hunts you." I felt cold all over. "Then what happens if we can't stop it?" The man didn't look at me when he answered. "You disappear, like the others." That night, I finally returned to my cabin, though every step toward that door felt like walking into a trap. The lights flickered as I entered. The air was thick, heavy, like the room itself was holding its breath. And then, the knocking started. Not from the balcony this time, not from the walls, from inside the closet. 3 sharp taps. I froze, staring at the door. My phone slipped from my trembling hands onto the carpet. The closet door rattled once, twice, and then, in perfect mimicry of my own voice, it whispered again. "Let me in." I stood frozen in the middle of my cabin, every muscle in my body locked tight. The closet door rattled again, louder this time, the thin wood bowing forward like something inside was pushing against it. My breath came in short, shallow gasps. I wanted to run. I wanted to throw the door open and prove to myself it was empty. But the voice came again, softer now, more desperate, my voice. "Please, it's so cold in here. Let me out." I stumbled backward until I hit the wall. My own words, my own tone, only twisted, hollow. Then the closet fell silent. I waited, heart thundering in my chest, afraid to move. After what felt like hours, I finally crept forward. My hand shook as I reached for the knob. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I needed to know. Maybe I thought denial would kill me faster than the truth. The moment my fingers brushed the handle, the closet door slammed from the inside with such force the whole cabin shook. I screamed and stumbled back, my knees giving out beneath me. And then silence again. I didn't sleep that night. I sat curled in the corner of the bed, staring at that closet door, waiting for it to move again. It never did, but I never closed my eyes either. By morning, I dragged myself to meet the others. They looked just as bad, dark circles, pale faces, trembling hands. "It's escalating," the woman whispered. "Mine came from the bathroom mirror last night." I saw my own reflection, but it wasn't moving when I did. The first man leaned in, his voice raw. "It's not just knocking anymore. It's trying to get out." I told them about the closet, about the slam, about the voice begging in the dark. None of them looked surprised. If anything, they looked resigned. That evening, as we sat huddled together in the corner of the lounge, the woman said something I'll never forget. "I don't think this is the first time it's happened. Think about it: missing passengers, unexplained vanishings, stories of haunted cabins. They don't advertise it, but what if every cruise has people who vanish like this? What if it's part of the ship?" Her words lingered long after the group dispersed. That night, when I returned to my cabin, I found something waiting on my bed. Not an object, not a note, a folded piece of paper, in my own handwriting. It read, "Stop resisting. Open the door." I dropped it instantly, my whole body trembling. My handwriting, but I hadn't written it. At that exact moment, the closet door creaked open by itself just an inch. From the darkness inside, my own eyes stared back at me. The eyes staring back at me from the closet were unmistakable. My own, same shade, same shape, same flicker of fear I felt burning in my chest. For a moment, I thought it was a trick of the mirror. But there was no mirror in the closet, just darkness. I staggered back, my breath catching in my throat. The door creaked wider. A hand slipped out of the shadows my hand. Pale, trembling, identical in every detail down to the scar on my knuckle from a childhood bike accident. And then, in a voice that was perfectly mine, it whispered again. "You can't keep me in here forever." I bolted. I didn't stop to think. I didn't stop to breathe. I threw the door wide open, sprinted down the hall, and didn't look back until I reached the lounge where the others usually gathered. They were there, waiting. Their faces told me I wasn't the only one who'd seen too much. "It showed itself," I gasped. "It's not just a voice anymore. It's me. It's trying to replace me." The woman's face drained of all color. "It happened to me too. In the bathroom mirror. I touched the glass, and it touched back." The first man slammed his fist against the table. "This ship is cursed. I don't care what the crew says, we need answers. We need to know what we're up against." So, for the first time, we decided not to hide. That night, we followed the knocking. Through the passenger decks, past the lounges and dining halls, down stairwells marked with crew-only signs. The deeper we went, the colder the air became, heavy with a stench like seawater and rot. The knocking grew louder, more frantic. Sometimes from the walls, sometimes the ceiling, sometimes right under our feet. Finally, we reached the lowest deck, an old maintenance corridor that looked abandoned. The paint peeled from the walls. Rust streaked the doors. The lights flickered like they hadn't been changed in years. At the very end of the hall stood a heavy steel door, the same one I'd heard before. The knocking from behind it was deafening now. But it wasn't just one set of knocks. It was dozens, hundreds, a chorus of fists slamming against the metal. And then the voices started, all of them screaming the same thing over and over in voices that mirrored our own. "Let us in." We stumbled back, but the first man pressed forward, his jaw clenched in grim determination. "This is it. This is where they're keeping it. Whatever it is." The woman grabbed his arm. "Don't open it. God, please don't." But he was already reaching for the handle. The moment his fingers touched the steel, the entire ship groaned like something alive. The lights flickered violently. And for the briefest instant, I swore I felt the floor breathe beneath my feet. Then the door handle twisted on its own, slowly, deliberately, from the other side. The steel door groaned as the handle twisted from the other side. The metal shook violently, as if something with enormous strength was clawing to get out. The woman screamed, clutching my arm. "Don't let it open! For God's sake, don't let it open!" The first man tried to pull her away, but his eyes never left the door. I could see it in his face. He wanted to know what was behind it, even if it killed him. And then, silence. The knocking stopped. The voices vanished. The door stilled, frozen mid-turn. We waited, breaths shallow, hearts pounding. The corridor was so quiet we could hear the ship's engines humming faintly beneath the floor. Then, footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, echoing from the far end of the hall. We spun around. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness. A crewman appeared, his expression furious. Behind him, 2 more crew members hurried in, their faces pale. "You're not supposed to be down here," the lead crewman barked. His voice carried something sharper than anger-fear. The woman shouted, "What's behind that door? What the hell is going on?" The crewman's jaw clenched. "You don't want to know." "We do want to know," the first man snapped, stepping forward. "People are vanishing. We're hearing voices, our own voices. You're hiding something. Tell us." The crewman's flashlight wavered for just a second. His lips trembled. Then, finally, he said it. "This ship, it doesn't belong here. It doesn't belong anywhere." The words made no sense. My stomach twisted. "What are you talking about?" His eyes darted toward the steel door. "That thing you hear? That's not people. That's the ship itself. It uses voices. It learns them. It takes them. And once it does, the real ones..." He swallowed hard. "They don't come back." The corridor vibrated suddenly, a deep rumble like thunder rolling through the metal walls. The door handle twisted again, this time violently. The crewman shouted, rushing forward to hold it shut. "Run!" one of them screamed. "Get out of here before it knows your face!" But my legs wouldn't move. My eyes were locked on the steel as the door buckled outward, metal warping like tinfoil. From the cracks, a sound poured out, hundreds of voices, overlapping, screaming, begging, whispering in a nightmarish chorus. And buried deep within it, I heard my own voice again. "Don't run! Open it! Let me out!" The crew shouted louder, straining against the door. The hallway lights flickered until the bulbs burst one by one, plunging us into flashes of strobing darkness. And then, in the chaos, I saw it. Through the widening crack in the steel, a hand, no, dozens of hands pressing against the gap. Some looked human, some didn't. All of them clawing, writhing, desperate to get through. The woman dragged me back, screaming in terror. The crew fought with everything they had, slamming the wheel lock into place, forcing the door shut inch by inch. When it finally sealed again, the corridor fell silent. The lead crewman turned to us, his face drenched in sweat. His voice was low, ragged, final. "If you want to live, forget this door exists, because if it ever opens fully, none of us will make it off this ship alive." We stood there, gasping, our bodies shaking from what we had just seen. That door, that thing behind it, was not something human, not something explainable, and worst of all, it wasn't finished with us. The lead crewman's warning echoed in my head. Forget this door exists. If it ever opens fully, none of us will make it off this ship alive. But how could I forget? How could any of us? I had seen my own face in the darkness, heard my own voice crying out. If the ship could take voices, memories, entire people, then who was I anymore? Back in my cabin, sleep was impossible. Every sound became amplified. The groan of the hull, the low rumble of the engines, the distant footsteps of crew patrolling the halls. But woven through it all was something else. A steady, rhythmic knock. This time, it wasn't at my balcony door. It wasn't at the closet. It was inside the walls themselves. 3 knocks, pause, 3 more, and then faintly, my voice again. "Let me in." I pressed my hands to my ears, rocking back and forth on the bed. No, it's not real, it's not real. But it was. The next morning, the dining hall was half empty. More passengers had vanished overnight. Their cabins locked, belongings untouched, but no trace of them anywhere. The crew moved like ghosts, their faces gaunt, their eyes bloodshot. They didn't answer questions anymore. They didn't even try to hide their fear. By the 6th night, something inside me cracked. I couldn't take it, the waiting, the knocking, the whispers that followed me everywhere. I went back to the others, the man and the woman who had been with me at the door. "We have to do something," I told them. "We can't just wait to be taken." The man shook his head. "There's nothing we can do. We saw it. It's the ship. You don't fight something like that." But the woman leaned closer, her eyes burning with a desperate kind of hope. "There might be a way." I overheard the crew. They say it started when this ship first crossed into a place it wasn't supposed to. A stretch of water that doesn't exist on maps. They call it the Black Current. "If we can get the ship out of it." Her words were cut short by the sudden groan of metal overhead, a deep shudder that rippled through the entire deck. The lights flickered, and then we all heard it at once. An eruption of screams. Thousands of voices crying out from every wall, floor, and ceiling. And this time, it wasn't begging to be let in. It was laughing. We ran. Through corridors that twisted longer than they should have, past doors that appeared and vanished, down stairwells that seemed to loop back on themselves. The ship wasn't just haunted, it was alive, and it was playing with us. At some point, we ended up back where it all began, the steel door. Only now, it wasn't silent, it wasn't sealed, it was open. Not wide, but enough. Enough for the hands to slip through. Enough for the faces to press against the gap. Dozens of faces, each one a perfect reflection of us, our doubles. They smiled, stretched mouths splitting wider than human jaws should allow. The crew was there too, 6 of them pushing against the door, their bodies trembling with the effort. One of them screamed, "Get out of here! Run to the lifeboats!" But when I turned, my blood ran cold. The lifeboats were gone. The launch decks were empty, the ropes frayed as though they had never held boats at all. The ship groaned again, tilting violently. People screamed as they were thrown against the walls. Water burst through the seams of the lower decks, rushing in with terrifying speed. And through it all, the voices roared. "Join US." The man who had been with us snapped. He charged the door, screaming back at the things inside. "Take me then, take me!" Before we could stop him, he pressed himself into the gap. The hands pulled him in instantly. His scream was cut short, swallowed by the cacophony inside. The woman sobbed, clinging to me. We're next, oh God, we're next!" But then, everything stopped. The voices cut off. The door slammed shut on its own. The ship tilted back upright. The water that had been rushing in receded, draining away into the cracks of the floor until the corridor was bone dry again. Silence. The crew slumped against the walls, their faces hollow. One of them whispered, "It's fed. It won't need more. Not tonight." I don't remember how I got back to my cabin. I don't remember falling asleep. But I woke the next morning to sunshine pouring through my balcony. The ocean was calm, glittering, beautiful as if nothing had ever happened. Passengers laughed on the deck. Music played by the pool. No one seemed to remember the screams, the disappearances, the door. And when I checked the ship's manifest later that day, the names of the vanished passengers, including the man, were gone, as if they had never existed at all. Only I remembered. On the last night of the cruise, I sat on my balcony again. The ocean was endless. The stars glittered above. For the first time in days, I almost felt peace until I heard it. 3 slow knocks from the glass door behind me, and when I turned, I nearly fainted. It was me, standing on the other side. Pale, hollow-eyed, smiling too wide, he raised his hand, pressing it to the glass. And in my own voice, perfectly clear, he whispered, "You can't keep me out forever." The glass began to crack. The lights went out. And when they came back on, he was gone. But the handprint remained. Story 3. The first scream didn't sound human. That's what made me freeze. I was standing on the upper deck just after midnight, staring out at the black ocean, when it split through the silence. A shrill, ragged sound, half a scream, half a howl. It didn't come from the water. It came from inside the ship. My name's Daniel. I'm 33, and I work as a paramedic in Boston. I booked this cruise after 3 years of back-to-back shifts and too many nights of watching people die in front of me. I needed an escape sunshine, drinks, music, and maybe a little sleep. That was the plan, a normal vacation. But as I stood there, clutching the railing, my whole body went cold. That sound, whatever it was, wasn't vacation noise. It was pain. At first, I thought maybe it was a drunk passenger messing around, until I heard it again, louder, longer. A scream that didn't just cut through the night, it carved it apart. Other passengers leaned over the railing, frowning, whispering. A man near me muttered, "That wasn't a person." And then the ship's PA system clicked on. A crew member's voice rang out, flat and cold. "Attention passengers, please return to your cabins immediately. Do not remain on deck." Repeat, "Return to your cabins now." People shuffled off quickly, whispering nervously. But me? My instincts kicked in. I've worked enough emergency calls to know the sound of someone in real pain. That was no joke. So instead of heading back to my cabin, I followed the sound, through the darkened deck, down a stairwell, into a hallway I hadn't seen before, one that wasn't marked on any of the ship's maps. The walls here were different, older, rust bleeding through the paint, the lights buzzing like they hadn't been changed in years. And at the very end of the hall, I heard it again. The scream. This time, there was no mistaking it. It was human, a woman's voice, shrill with terror. I sprinted toward it, my heart pounding only to find a door. Heavy steel, bolted shut. The scream came again right from the other side, followed by pounding fists. "Help! Please, God, help me!" I grabbed the handle, yanking, pulling, slamming my shoulder into the door. But it wouldn't budge. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the screaming stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound itself. And when I pressed my ear to the door, trembling, I heard something else. Breathing, slow, heavy, and definitely not human. I stumbled back from the door, my pulse pounding so loud I swore it would wake the entire deck. That sound, that breathing, it didn't belong in this world. I've heard every kind of wheeze, gasp, and death rattle in my years as a paramedic. This wasn't human. It was too deep, too slow, each inhale vibrating through the steel like the lungs of something massive. I wanted to run. God, every cell in my body screamed at me to run, but I couldn't. Whoever had been screaming a moment ago might still be in there, maybe alive, maybe waiting for me to help. I leaned in again, pressing my ear against the cold metal, straining to hear through the hum of the ship's engines. And then it shifted. The breathing stopped. In its place came a sound I'll never forget. A whisper, not loud, not rushed. Just one word, stretched out, curling through the steel like smoke. Daniel. I nearly dropped dead right there. My name. It had said my name. I stumbled backward, slamming into the opposite wall, my breath coming in sharp gasps. That wasn't possible. No one on the ship knew me. I hadn't even told my table mates at dinner more than where I was from. And then the whisper came again, louder this time, rattling the bolts on the door. Daniel. The lights above flickered. My shadow stretched across the hallway, long and crooked, bending in ways that didn't make sense. I bolted. My legs carried me down that rusted corridor faster than I've ever moved in my life. My shoes slapped against the floor, my heart a jackhammer inside my chest. When I reached the stairwell, I risked one glance back. The steel door stood there, still shut, still locked. But I swear, just for a moment, I saw the handle turning. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I shut my eyes, I saw that door, heard that whisper. By morning, the ship was back to normal. Sunlight glittered off the waves. Passengers laughed by the pool. A calypso band played cheerful music. It was like the night before had been a bad dream, except it wasn't. At breakfast, I noticed something. A woman at the buffet line, standing stiff as stone, her tray trembling in her hands. She looked pale, hollow-eyed, like she hadn't slept in days. I approached her cautiously. Rough night? I tried to sound casual. Her head snapped toward me, eyes wide. You heard it too. My stomach dropped. The scream? She nodded, her lips trembling. The screaming and the voice. It said my name. Before I could reply, a crew member appeared out of nowhere, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. Ma'am, let's get you some rest. His smile was rehearsed, too wide, too polished. She tried to protest, but he was already steering her away, whispering something I couldn't hear. When I looked back at the buffet, her tray was still there, untouched. And when I asked later at dinner if anyone had seen her, nobody even knew who I was talking about. That night, I stayed awake in my cabin, lights on, waiting. Midnight came. At first, nothing. Just the hum of the engines, the occasional shuffle of feet in the corridor. And then it started. The knocking. 3 times against the wall. Directly behind my bed. I froze, staring at the wallpaper as the sound vibrated through it. 3 more knocks, and then the voice again. Daniel. But this time, it wasn't coming from the steel door. It was coming from inside my cabin. I didn't move. I couldn't. My whole body locked in place as the word echoed softly against the cabin walls. Daniel. It didn't sound muffled anymore. It wasn't leaking through the steel of a locked door. It was clear, sharp, close. Too close. My eyes darted around the room, the desk, the closet, the bathroom door left slightly ajar. Shadows stretched long and crooked under the glow of the bedside lamp, but nothing moved. Nothing looked wrong. And yet, I wasn't alone. I forced myself to whisper, my voice cracking. Who's there? No response. Just the creak of the ship shifting against the waves. I swallowed hard, grabbed the small flashlight I'd packed, and clicked it on. The beam cut across the cabin, shaking in my trembling hand. Nothing. I stood slowly, crossing the carpet toward the closet. Every step felt like wading through wet cement. I reached for the handle, and that's when I heard it again. Not my name this time. Laughter. Low, broken laughter, bubbling like it came from someone choking on seawater. It seeped out from the closet door. I yanked it open in one swift motion, the flashlight beam cutting through the dark empty. Just clothes swaying slightly on their hangers, as if someone had brushed past them seconds before. My throat tightened. I wasn't imagining this. I couldn't be. I backed away from the closet, my light sweeping the cabin in frantic arcs. And then, behind me, right at my ear, Daniel. I spun, swinging the flashlight. No one. The light flickered once, twice, then went out. Darkness swallowed the room. And in the dark, I heard the breathing again, slow, deep, filling every corner of the cabin. I stumbled toward the door, fumbling with the lock, but my hands were slick with sweat. My fingers slipped on the handle. Behind me, the breathing grew louder, closer, and then 3 sharp knocks, not on the wall, not on the closet, on the inside of my cabin door, the very door I was trying to escape through. I froze, my forehead pressed to the wood, the handle rattling under my grip. From the other side, the whisper came again. Let me in. But this time, it wasn't just my voice. It was dozens, layered together. Men, women, children, all whispering the same 3 words in unison. Let me in. I stumbled backward, my back slamming against the desk, my heart racing so hard I thought it would burst, and then silence. Dead, suffocating silence. Until the lock on the door clicked, all on its own, and the handle began to turn. The handle turned halfway before stopping. My chest rose and fell in ragged breaths. My body pressed against the desk like a cornered animal. I couldn't take my eyes off the door, terrified that at any second it would swing open and whatever waited on the other side would come pouring in, but it didn't open. Instead, the door shuddered once, twice, as if something heavy was leaning against it. Then came a long dragging sound, like nails scraping slowly down the other side of the wood. I covered my ears, squeezing my eyes shut, but it didn't help. The sound wasn't just noise, it was inside my head, and then it stopped. Silence. I opened my eyes cautiously, my chest heaving. The door was still shut, the handle still, the lock in place. Nothing. I let out a shaky laugh, almost delirious with relief. Maybe it was over. That's when I noticed the clock. 12:34 a.m. The glowing numbers cast a faint light over the cabin. And smeared across the face of the clock, written in something dark, were 3 words. Let me in. I froze, my skin crawling, every hair on my arms standing on end. The words glistened wetly in the dim light. I stumbled back, knocking over the chair, and that's when I heard it again this time, not at the door, not on the walls, but directly behind me. A whisper. Daniel. I spun around, and for the first time, I saw it. Not clearly, not fully formed, but enough to know that it wasn't human. A figure stood in the corner of my cabin, tall and skeletal, its body shrouded in shadow. Its head tilted too far to the side, bones creaking like wood splitting under pressure. And where its face should have been, there was only darkness, a hollow void. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching me. The air in the cabin grew colder, frost creeping across the glass of the balcony door. My breath fogged in the air, my body shaking uncontrollably. The thing took 1 step forward. The floor groaned under its weight. I bolted. I didn't think, didn't breathe, didn't stop to grab anything. I wrenched open the cabin door and tore down the hallway, barefoot, my footsteps echoing against the carpeted floor. Behind me, I swore I heard more footsteps, slow, heavy, following. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just ran. I tore down the endless corridor, each breath scraping my throat raw. The hallway stretched on longer than it should have, cabin doors blurring past me, numbers repeating, like I was running in circles. My bare feet slapped the carpet, every sound amplified by the ringing in my ears. And then, ahead of me, I saw them, 3 passengers huddled together near a stairwell. A middle-aged man in a wrinkled polo, clutching his wife's arm. A younger woman with wild eyes, her hair tangled from sleep. They looked up as I barreled toward them, their faces pale with the same kind of terror I felt. "You heard it too," the woman whispered, her voice trembling. I nearly collapsed in relief. "The voice, the thing, it's real?" They all nodded in unison, wide-eyed, as if too afraid to say the word yes. The man leaned in close. His lips barely moved when he spoke, but his words made my stomach drop. "It follows you. Once it calls your name, You can't get rid of it." My mouth went dry. "What? What do you mean, calls your name?" The woman's eyes darted over my shoulder, down the hallway I had just come from. "It starts in whispers," she said, her voice shaking. "Then it gets louder, closer, until one night," she trailed off, swallowing hard, tears brimming in her eyes. "Until one night, you answer it." Before I could press her for more, the stairwell door behind them rattled violently. All four of us froze, eyes locked on the steel handle as it twisted once, twice, and then we heard it, a voice muffled through the door. My voice. "Please, let me in." The woman clutched her head, whispering prayers under her breath. The man dragged her back, but the younger woman, the one with tangled hair, took a step closer. "It sounds like you," she whispered, staring at me with wide, horrified eyes. The handle shook harder, the door groaning under invisible weight. I staggered back, my pulse slamming in my temples. "That's not me. That's not—" The voice came again, clearer this time. "Daniel, open the door." I snapped toward the others. "We need to move now." But they didn't. The tangled-haired woman reached for the handle. Her fingers brushed it, and instantly the door flung open. The hallway lights flickered violently, plunging us into stuttering frames of light and dark. And in one of those flashes, I saw it looming in the doorway. That same skeletal figure, hollow-faced, its body dripping with seawater that pooled across the carpet. It stepped forward, each movement jerky, unnatural, its head twitching side to side as if sniffing us out. The man screamed. The wife pulled at him, trying to drag him up the stairs. And me? I ran again. Because I knew deep in my bones that if I stayed long enough for it to speak my name again, I wouldn't be able to stop myself from answering. The stairwell exploded with screams. The older couple stumbled upward, the man half dragged by his wife, his panicked shouts echoing through the steel. The younger woman, the one who'd reached for the handle, froze, her hand still suspended midair as though something unseen held it in place. The figure stepped toward her. Water dripped in heavy streams from its elongated fingers, splattering across the carpet. Its faceless head tilted, almost studying her. She whimpered, her body trembling violently, but she didn't move. I don't know what possessed me, but I lunged forward and grabbed her arm, yanking her back with every ounce of strength I had. She snapped free of the invisible grip and collapsed to the floor, gasping for air like she'd been underwater for hours. The entity twitched. Its head turned sharply toward me, and then I heard it, not out loud, inside my skull. "Daniel!" The sound reverberated through my bones, a vibration that rattled my teeth and made my vision blur. My knees buckled, but I forced myself to stay upright, clutching the woman's wrist. "Move!" I shouted, dragging her toward the stairs. We bolted upward, the fluorescent lights above flickering as the entity's wet, slapping footsteps followed. The stairwell reeked of salt and rot, the air growing heavier with each step. By the time we reached deck 7, the older couple had vanished down another corridor, their cries fading into the maze of the ship. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I didn't dare stop. The young woman stumbled beside me, her face pale, her breathing ragged. Finally, we ducked into a storage room, slamming the door shut and bracing it with a metal chair. For a long, agonizing moment, there was only silence. Then tap, 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 knuckles rapped gently against the door, a rhythm far too calm for the chaos we'd just fled. "Daniel." The voice slithered through the crack in the door like smoke, wrapping around me, pulling me closer. The young woman clapped her hands over her ears, tears streaming down her face. "Don't answer it," she whispered. "No matter what, don't answer." The knocking stopped, but the voice didn't. It came from inside the room this time, curling out of the shadows stacked high with boxes and tools. "Daniel." We both spun, the flashlight beam trembling wildly as it scanned the cluttered space. Nothing. Only shelves, crates, shadows that seemed to stretch longer than they should. "Stop it!" I shouted, my voice cracking. "What do you want?" The whisper twisted in reply, almost pleased. "To be let in." The temperature plummeted. Frost formed across the metal shelves, our breath puffing white in the dark. The woman grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "It's not asking," she hissed. "It's waiting." And then the chair bracing the door rattled, once, twice. Slowly, impossibly, it began to scrape across the floor on its own. The chair screeched across the tile floor as if pulled by invisible hands. The sound made my skin crawl, a high-pitched wail of metal dragging against metal. I lunged forward, throwing my weight against the door, slamming the chair back into place. The young woman sobbed quietly, rocking against the wall, whispering something over and over like a prayer, or maybe just her own name. For a moment, everything stilled. No knocking, no whispers, just the hammering of my pulse in my ears. Then the light bulb above us popped. The room fell into pitch black. My flashlight flickered in my trembling hand, beams stuttering across boxes, tangled ropes, old life jackets, and then it caught something in the corner, a shadow, not cast by me, not cast by her. It was standing upright, pressed into the farthest edge of the room. I froze. My brain refused to register it, like my mind itself was trying to protect me from what I was seeing. But the longer I stared, the clearer it became. The same outline, thin, drenched, its head cocked at an unnatural angle, watching me. The flashlight dimmed, sputtered, and the voice slithered through the dark again, closer this time, almost inside my ear. "Daniel!" The woman snapped her hands from her ears and screamed. I grabbed her wrist and yanked her toward the shelves. My fingers scrambled across boxes until they found a heavy wrench. My heart pounded as I swung the beam back toward the shadow. It was gone. The door slammed open. The force knocked me backward into a shelf, tools and ropes crashing down around us. The girl shrieked as the entity spilled into the room tall, dripping, its faceless head twitching from side to side like a broken puppet. Its long arms reached forward. Instinct screamed louder than fear. I pulled the woman to her feet, shoved past the doorway, and sprinted into the hallway. We didn't stop running until the storage room was a fading memory behind us. Every hallway looked the same, but one door finally caught my attention. Not a cabin. Not passenger access. Crew only. The sign was chipped, paint peeling, as if it had been there for decades. Without hesitation, I shoved it open and pulled the girl inside. The air was different here. Damp, heavy. Pipes ran along the low ceiling, dripping rust-colored water. The walls were bare steel. No carpeting. No polished veneer like the passenger decks. It was the belly of the ship industrial, forgotten. But what made my blood turn cold wasn't the change of scenery. It was the sound. From deep within the corridor of crew-only passageways came hundreds of whispers. They weren't screaming. They weren't knocking. They were waiting. The corridor stretched endlessly, pipes rattling above us, dripping brown water that smelled like rust and salt. Every step we took echoed, bouncing into the distance, as if the ship itself had a hollow heart. The whispers grew louder, hundreds of voices overlapping in a low murmur that made it impossible to tell where they came from or if they were even real. The girl clutched my arm so tightly, her nails dug into my skin. "We shouldn't be here," she whispered, her voice breaking. "This isn't for passengers. This place, it isn't on the maps." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat was dry, my mind spinning with panic. I just kept walking, forcing my legs to move, even as every instinct screamed to turn back. Then we reached it, a door at the end of the corridor. Heavy steel, no handle, only a rusted wheel bolted in the center like a vault. And smeared across it, in something dark that looked too much like dried blood, were handprints. Dozens of them, small, large, overlapping. The whispers sharpened. "Clearer now. Help us. Don't leave. Let us out." I staggered back, shaking my head violently. No, this isn't real. This can't be real." The girl stared at the wheel with wide, terrified eyes. "They're inside." Before I could stop her, she reached for it. Her fingers wrapped around the rusted spokes and began to turn. "No!" I grabbed her wrist, pulling her back. "You don't know what's in there!" Tears streamed down her face. "I know. My sister. She disappeared last night. She's in there. I can hear her. That's her voice." The whispers surged, rising to a deafening chorus. My stomach dropped as I realized she was right. One voice among the hundreds was clearer, closer, calling the girl's name over and over. Emily! Her body trembled as she tried to break free of my grip. It's her! I swear to God, it's her! The wheel groaned, metal shrieking as it shifted slightly under her pull. A rush of icy air seeped from the cracks, carrying with it the unmistakable stench of rot and seawater. Stop! I shouted, forcing her away from the door. That's not your sister. It's using her voice. The whispers changed. They began to laugh. Not cruelly, not humanly, but the sound of wet, gurgling throats, bubbling up like drowning lungs. The girl's knees buckled, and she collapsed against me, sobbing uncontrollably. I dragged her back down the corridor, away from the door, away from the voices. But even as we fled, the laughter followed, rolling through the pipes, slithering across the steel walls. And then, the whispers stopped. Silence. We froze, staring at each other, our breathing ragged. For a few precious seconds, I thought maybe, just maybe, we had outrun it, until I noticed the condensation forming on the steel walls around us. Words. We are already out. Emily's nails dug into my arm as we staggered back through the narrow corridor, her sobs echoing too loudly in the silence that had replaced the whispers. My chest heaved, every breath tasting like rust and salt. The steel walls dripped with condensation, the words smeared across them fading as if they'd never been there. But the silence was worse than the voices. Silence meant waiting. Silence meant something was listening. We turned a corner, and that's when I saw it, an old stairwell leading downward, almost hidden behind a stack of rusted crates. The paint on the railing was chipped, the steps slick with grime, but it didn't look like any stairwell I'd seen on the passenger maps. Emily tugged at my sleeve, shaking her head violently. No, we're not going down there. We need to find the others. There are no others, I whispered, my voice breaking. Not anymore. If we go back, we'll end up like them. Her wide eyes glistened with tears. And if we go down there? I swallowed hard, staring into the black pit of the stairwell. The air rising from below was colder, heavier, and carried with it a faint sound. Not whispers this time, something else. A steady, rhythmic thump, 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 like a heartbeat. I tightened my grip on the wrench in my hand. We'll find out. We descended slowly, each step groaning under our weight. The deeper we went, the darker it became, until my flashlight beam was the only light cutting through the shadows. The sound grew louder, reverberating through the metal walls like the pulse of the ship itself. At the bottom of the stairs, we emerged into a vast chamber. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't part of the ship. The ceiling stretched far above us, crisscrossed with pipes that dripped black water into pools along the floor. Rusted chains dangled from beams, swaying though there was no wind. And in the center of the room stood something that made my blood turn to ice. A structure. It looked like a cage welded into the floor, the steel bars twisted and warped as if something had forced its way out. The floor around it was stained dark, the marks spreading outward in jagged patterns like veins. Emily's hand trembled in mine. What? What is this place? Before I could answer, a voice rolled through the chamber, deep and guttural, vibrating through my bones. Welcome home. The flashlight flickered. Shadows moved along the walls, writhing and stretching like they were alive. And then I saw them. Figures. Dozens of them. Their bodies pale, bloated, dripping seawater, their eyes hollow sockets. Passengers, crew, all the missing faces. They stepped forward in unison, water sloshing with every step. Their mouths hung open, and the sound of that terrible heartbeat grew louder coming from them. Emily screamed, stumbling backward, but they didn't chase. They just stood there, waiting. One of them stepped closer, a man in a torn steward's uniform, his jaw hanging by a strip of skin. He raised a waterlogged hand and pointed directly at me. And all of them, together, whispered, "You were always meant to join us." The chamber reeked of salt, rot, and something older. The smell wasn't just foul, it was ancient, as if the air itself had been trapped down here for centuries. My flashlight beam trembled over the waterlogged faces staring at me. their mouths frozen open, black seawater spilling from their lips. Emily's grip crushed my hand, her body shaking violently. We have to run. But where? The stairwell behind us groaned. When I turned the light, my chest tightened. The way we'd come down was gone. The stairs had collapsed, or maybe they'd never existed at all. Just rusted pipes, wet steel, and a solid wall where the staircase had been moments before. Emily whimpered. No, 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 no. That's impossible. The figures began to step forward, their footsteps sending ripples through the shallow pools of black water. Every movement was in perfect unison, arms swaying, heads tilting, legs dragging as though they were all one body, controlled by a single will. The guttural voice rolled again, bouncing off the walls. You are part of us now. I gripped the wrench tighter, knuckles white. My heart pounded so loud I thought it would burst through my chest. Stay behind me, I muttered, though the words sounded hollow. Emily shook her head, her voice breaking. Don't you get it? There is no behind. We're already in it. I opened my mouth to demand what she meant, but the flashlight flickered, sputtered, and then died. Darkness swallowed everything. And in that pitch black, the heartbeat grew louder, not a sound anymore, a sensation. I could feel it in my teeth, in my skull, in the hollow pit of my stomach. I swung the wrench wildly, connecting with something soft. A wet crunch followed, but no scream. Only more footsteps, more water sloshing, then a hand clammy, bloated, cold wrapped around my wrist. Another grabbed my shoulder, another around my throat. I thrashed, screamed, clawed at the darkness, but they were everywhere. Hands pulling, pressing, dragging me downward into the black water. Emily's scream cut through the chaos. Let him go! A blinding flash lit up the chamber for just a second. Emily had grabbed a rusted lantern from the wall and smashed it against the bars of the broken cage. Fire exploded across the oil-slicked water, a wave of orange flames racing outward. The figures recoiled, hissing, their pale faces twisting in the glow. For the first time, they broke formation, stumbling backward into the shadows. The heartbeat faltered, slowed. I dragged myself onto a dry patch of floor, coughing violently, the taste of salt and blood thick in my mouth. Emily grabbed my arm, yanking me up. Move before it comes back! We ran, across the chamber, past the broken cage, through a low archway that seemed to appear out of nowhere. The corridor beyond tilted sharply downward, the floor slick with seawater. Pipes burst along the ceiling, spraying mist into the air. The deeper we went, the colder it became, until our breath fogged in front of us. Emily's voice trembled. Do you hear it? I listened. Not whispers, not laughter. Breathing, long, slow, inhuman breaths, echoing through the steel like the lungs of the ship itself. And then, from the darkness ahead, a shape moved. It was massive. Crawling, twisted. Its limbs were too long, its body too wide, scraping against the walls as it dragged itself toward us. The thing that had escaped the cage. The creature's silhouette scraped against the walls, too big to belong in a ship made for humans. Its body seemed half dissolved, as if it had been born out of the sea itself. Skin hung in sheets, dripping seawater, revealing muscle and bone beneath that pulsed like it was alive with something else. Emily froze, whispering through trembling lips. That thing was never human. The ship groaned, metal twisting above us as if the creature's breathing alone was bending the hull. I grabbed her hand. Run! We bolted down the corridor, boots splashing through ankle, deep water, the sound of our steps drowned by the thunderous scraping as the thing crawled after us. Every time it moved, the steel around us screamed. Pipes burst, spraying freezing mist into our faces. Lights above flickered violently, casting strobe flashes over the monster behind us. In those split-second glimpses, I saw its head, or what should have been a head. A gaping hole where a face should be. Just a mouth, lined with endless rows of teeth, and inside those teeth faces, dozens of them, Emily's sister, the old man from dinner, the laughing children from the pool deck. All their faces were inside it, mouths open, silently screaming. My chest tightened with nausea. This thing wasn't just killing them, It was keeping them, absorbing them. The corridor split ahead, 2 paths left or right. Emily yanked me toward the right, and we stumbled into a wider space, a service bay. Crates floated in water that had pooled waist-high. The sound of the creature behind us grew louder, closer. The bay vibrated with every crawl. Emily scrambled onto a crate, reaching down to pull me up. "Higher ground, hurry!" I hauled myself up, but as I did, a pale hand shot from the water and grabbed my ankle. Another followed, and another. Soon, dozens of hands clawed from below, pulling, dragging me back into the water. Emily screamed, beating at the hands with a rusted pipe she'd found, her sobs tearing through the air. As my head dipped beneath the black water, I saw them, the passengers. Their bodies swaying beneath the surface like drowned marionettes, eyes open, mouths moving without sound, and all of them were looking directly at me. Then the creature's voice filled the chamber, deep and endless, rattling my bones. Join us. Story 27, Installment 12, Final. I don't know how, but I broke free. My lungs were burning, my body weak, but I tore my leg out of their grasp and pulled myself back onto the crate. Emily's hands grabbed my shoulders, dragging me fully out of the water. The creature was here now. Its enormous body filled the bay, pushing crates aside, bending steel walls outward as it dragged itself closer. Its open maw stretched wider, the faces inside writhing, each one silently begging for release. Emily clutched my arm, tears streaking her face. "We can't fight it. We can't outrun it." I stared around wildly, my eyes catching on a massive red lever near the wall. Emergency flood control. I knew what it meant. Pull it, and the bay would seal. Water would pour in. Everything inside would drown. Emily followed my gaze. Her face went pale. No, we can't. It's the only way!" I shouted over the thunderous roar of the creature closing in. Her sobbing answer was lost in the noise. I leapt from the crate, splashing through the rising water, and grabbed the lever with both hands. It resisted, stiff from rust, but I pulled with everything I had. The ship shuddered, sirens wailed. Steel doors slammed shut around the bay, locking us in. Water began to surge in through hidden vents, a rushing torrent that hit me like a wall. The creature bellowed, a sound so massive it shook the water itself. It lunged toward me, teeth stretching impossibly wide. I screamed and yanked the lever all the way down. The last thing I saw was Emily's face, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent cry as the water swallowed us whole. Darkness, cold, pressure crushing me from every side. And in that black abyss, the faces came closer, hundreds of them. Emily, her sister, the missing passengers. They surrounded me, mouths moving in unison. And then I felt it, my body going still, my lungs no longer burning, my heart slowing until it stopped. I wasn't drowning, I was becoming. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't myself anymore. I was part of them, my face now one among hundreds, trapped inside the creature's endless maw, screaming silently for the next soul to join us. And the worst part? The ship sails on. Passengers still laugh above deck, drink cocktails, watch the ocean pass by. They don't hear us, not yet. But when the sun goes down, when midnight comes, they will. Because no matter how far this ship sails, the hunger always rises again, and I'll be waiting.